Um, so what I have here, I'm going to show you two screens. One is I am a split administrator. And as a split administrator within the admin settings, if I come to security, I have SAML enabled, as well as I have a new tab here, which says SCIM, which gives me the access to enable it for Okta or Azure AD. This demo is going to be for Azure AD specifically. To prepare for this demo, what I've also done is I have a user that is an Azure AD user that is already part of Split. And then once I enable the SCIM, you will see that these users get linked with your Azure AD account and start getting managed. On the group side, I have created a sync group, an Azure sync group. This is a group that currently has one member, and we are going to now start managing this group via Azure AD. Quickly moving on to the Azure AD side. So within Azure AD, what you see is there's an enterprise application. I've already created an enterprise application for my demo here. This application has already been set up for SSO, which is a prerequisite before you can set up SCIM for any organization. In this demo, again, for this, on the Azure AD side as well, I have created a bunch of users. You can see that webinar 001 is a user that exists on both sides, Azure AD as well as Split, but it's not yet linked together. And then there is a new user, webinar 002, which is something that should get created on the Split side once we enable the provisioning. Within the groups, I have created a group with the same name, which is Azure Sync Group. These two groups should get linked and their membership should reflect across both the systems. I have a group that's a new group, so that's a brand new group. And then we have something called as split_administrators. This is a special keyword group that we have introduced. If you create a group with this name, this will get mapped into the group called administrators on the Split side. The reason we went down this route is administrators is a keyword, is a reserved keyword on Split. That is one group that you cannot delete from a Split organization. And hence we wanted to give you the flexibility to be able to create a subset of administrators. You could have an administrators group that is a more broader group on the Azure AD front. So just a slight rename for Split administrators. With that, I'm going to connect the two systems. So right now I'm going to go back to Split. So like I mentioned, under the security tab, we now have a new tab called SCIM. I'm going to go and select Azure AD as my IDP and then toggle this button as on. As soon as I do that, I get two pieces of information. One is the access token, as well as the SCIM connector base URL. These are two pieces of information that I will copy into my Azure configuration to connect Azure with Split. So the first thing I'm going to go is, let me go back to my Azure application. So like I mentioned, again, this is an enterprise application called Azure Split Azure AD webinar. Inside here, there is a tab under the manage section called provisioning. Once I click provisioning, I'm going to get started with that setup. The provisioning mode is automatic. And this is where it's asking for a tenant URL and a secret token. And I'm going to copy over the information from Split into Azure. So I'm going to go back to my Split application, pick up the URL. I'm in my Azure AD. This is where the URL goes. I'm going to go back to Split. I'm going to pick up the access token and going to put that in the secret token and test the connection. This green check tells us that the connection is now established and the token has the right privileges to create users and groups. I'm going to save this. Once I save the provisioning setting, I have an additional setting to do in the mapping section. So I go to the provision Azure Active Directory users. Under the mapping section, there is one attribute. What you see on the left are the attributes in Azure Active Directory. And then on the right, you see the attributes on the split side. So we want to make sure that the email type equals work value actually has the email ID from the Azure system. In my setup, the email ID is with the user principal name. So I'm going to change the source attribute to be user principal name, which will flow in the value into the email type equal work value for the split side. All right, with that, I'm saving the attribute mapping. So this brings us to the screen on the Azure AD side. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. This is the start provisioning option. Before I go ahead, I just want to go over the users and groups once more. So this enterprise application on the Azure AD already has been assigned to 2 users and 3 groups. And when I start the provisioning, these and only these users and groups will get linked to the split application. So back to the provisioning tab, I'm going to hit on start provisioning and wait for the provisioning to run. I'm going to refresh my screen to see. There you go. So I refreshed my screen. The initial cycle is 100% complete. And this gives you the status of 2 users and 3 groups that have come over to the split side. So let's go over to split and confirm that setting. Now I'm going to go back into my admin settings tab and check out the users. So here you can see that the 2 users have come over, webinar 001 and 002. When you hover over these users, you do get that this is an IDP managed user. That means that all the actions on this user are going to be managed through Azure AD and not here. If I go on to the groups tab, here you can see there are 3 groups. The administrators group, the name of the group stays the same on the split side, but it is linked to the split administrators. If I view the members of this group, so webinar 001 has replaced the administrator as an administrator of this organization here. Another thing to note that now you see the Azure icon next to these group names that tells you that these are linked groups to Azure and the last sync date. Again, the only action here is to view the group. You cannot change the membership of these groups on the split side. For that, you would have to go to Azure AD and make changes. I am not going to demo any changes because it's just going to take about 40 minutes for the next changes to sync over. But you could essentially go into users and groups here and change any of these configurations for them to be picked up in the next cycle run. That brings me to the end of my demo.